Hi, and welcome to Historical Influence. Here, we explore amazing stories of people and events that shaped our history. Join us to learn, discover, and get inspired by the past in a fun and engaging way. He was a man who crowned himself emperor, conquered most of Europe, and changed the face of warfare forever. Napoleon Bonaparte, a symbol of genius, ambition, and controversy. But how did a young Corsican officer rise to power, and why did it all come crashing down at Waterloo? Based on the sources provided, the French Revolution was a period of profound political and social change in France from 1789 to 1799. It ultimately concluded with the coup of 18 Brumaire on November 9, 1799, which established the consulate and brought Napoleon Bonaparte to power as first consul. The revolution began due to a combination of social, political, and economic crises that led to the convening of the Estates General in May 1789. Key events during the revolutionary period included the storming of the Bastille, the abolition of feudalism, and the issuance of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. The struggle for political control led to the overthrow of the monarchy, the establishment of the French First Republic in September 1792, and the execution of King Louis XVI in January 1793. Following a radical phase known as the Reign of Terror, led by the Jacobins, a more moderate government called the Directory was established in November 1795. However, the Directory was marked by instability, which paved the way for the coup that ended the revolution and installed Napoleon as the leader of France. Many of the ideas from the revolution are now considered fundamental principles of liberal democracy. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769, in Ajaccio, Corsica, to a family of Italian noble origin. Corsica had been ceded to France by the Republic of Genoa just a year before his birth. His parents were Carlo Maria Bonaparte and Maria Letizia Remolino. His father, Carlo, initially supported the Corsican independence movement, but later befriended the French governor, which allowed him to secure a royal scholarship for Napoleon to attend a military academy in mainland France. His mother, Letizia, was a major influence in his childhood, providing firm discipline that shaped his character. Napoleon later stated, "The future destiny of the child is always the work of the mother." At the age of 9, in January 1779, Napoleon moved to mainland France to attend a religious school in Autun to improve his French, as his native languages were Corsican and Italian. He always spoke French with a distinct Corsican accent and struggled with spelling. Later that year, he transferred to the military academy at Brienne-le-Château, where he was often bullied by his peers for his accent, birthplace, and short stature. This led him to become reserved and studious, applying himself to reading. An examiner noted his exceptional talent for mathematics. During this time, he also became a strong Corsican nationalist. In September 1784, he was admitted to the prestigious École Militaire in Paris to train as an artillery officer. He excelled in mathematics and was an avid reader of geography, history, and literature. Following his father's death in February 1785, his family's income was reduced, forcing Napoleon to complete the 2-year course in just 1 year. In September 1785, he was examined by the famous scientist Pierre-Simon Laplace and became the first Corsican to graduate from the École Militaire. Following the exposure of a royalist plot to assassinate him in February 1804, Napoleon's supporters convinced him that establishing a hereditary regime would secure his legacy and place France on equal footing with other European monarchies. This led the French Senate to proclaim Napoleon Emperor of the French on May 18, 1804. The decision was confirmed by a plebiscite in June, though the results were inflated. Napoleon's coronation took place at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris on December 2, 1804. Pope Pius VII was present and participated in the ceremony. After being anointed by the Pope, Napoleon famously took the crown, a replica of Charlemagne's crown, and crowned himself. He then proceeded to crown his wife, Josephine, as empress. During the ceremony, Napoleon swore an oath to defend the Republic's territory, respect freedoms, including worship, political and civil liberty, uphold the Concordat, and govern for the interests, well-being, and the glory of the French people. Several months later, on May 26, 1805, Napoleon also crowned himself King of Italy at the Cathedral of Milan, using the historic Iron Crown of Lombardy. This act was seen as a provocation by Austria, which had its own territorial interests in Italy. The beginning of the empire. Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power began with the coup of 18 Brumaire, November 9, 1799, where he, along with allies, overthrew the unpopular and bankrupt Directory. This led to the establishment of the French consulate, with Napoleon as the powerful first consul. He consolidated his rule by reforming state finances, centralizing administration, and suppressing opposition. His popularity soared after military victories, particularly against Austria at the Battle of Marengo in 1800. A period of peace, economic recovery, and reconciliation, including the Concordat with the Pope, further strengthened his position, leading to his appointment as consul for life in 1802. The transition to an empire was triggered by a royalist plot to assassinate him in 1804. Supporters argued that a hereditary regime would secure his legacy and place France on par with other European monarchies. On May 18, 1804, the French Senate proclaimed Napoleon Emperor of the French. This was confirmed by a plebiscite, and on December 2, 1804, he crowned himself Emperor at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris with Pope Pius VII. He later also crowned himself King of Italy in May 1805. This marked the formal beginning of the First French Empire, which, at its peak in 1812, saw Napoleon ruling, either directly or through satellite states, over about 40% of Europe's population. The end of the empire was precipitated by the disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. The campaign decimated Napoleon's Grande Armée with up to 1 million military deaths on both sides, from fighting, starvation, and the harsh winter. This catastrophic defeat encouraged his enemies to form a new alliance against him. In the subsequent war of the Sixth Coalition, a combined force of Russia, Prussia, Sweden, Britain, and Austria defeated Napoleon's depleted army at the Battle of Leipzig in October 1813, the largest battle of the Napoleonic Wars. After rejecting peace terms, the Allies invaded France in January 1814. Facing overwhelming numbers, Napoleon was forced to retreat, and the Allied forces captured Paris on March 31, 1814. Pressured by his senior commanders and facing a provisional government that had declared him deposed, Napoleon abdicated unconditionally on April 6, 1814. He was exiled to the island of Elba, which he was allowed to rule as a sovereign principality. This first abdication marked the initial end of the empire. However, Napoleon escaped from Elba in February 1815, returned to France, and regained power for a period known as the 100 Days.
The European powers immediately declared him an outlaw and mobilized against him. The final end of his rule came with his decisive defeat at the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. He returned to Paris, but with the legislature against him, he abdicated for the second and final time on June 22, 1815, in favor of his son. He later surrendered to the British and was exiled to the remote Atlantic island of St. Helena.
Exile on St. Helena. Following his final defeat, Napoleon was taken into British custody and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 1,870 kilometers from the African coast. He arrived in October 1815 with 27 followers and was heavily guarded by a garrison of 2,100 soldiers and a naval squadron of 10 ships to prevent any escape attempts. Initially housed in a pavilion at Briars, he was later moved to Longwood House, a 40-room bungalow that was described as damp, windswept, rat-infested, and unhealthy. Napoleon frequently complained about these poor living conditions to the island's governor, Hudson Lowe. To maintain a sense of his former status, Napoleon insisted on imperial formality, requiring formal attire for dinner parties and receiving visitors ceremoniously. During his captivity, he dictated his memoirs, studied English for a brief period, and circulated reports of his poor treatment, hoping public opinion would lead to his release. Governor Lowe, under government instructions, cut Napoleon's expenses and refused to recognize his title as a former emperor. Decline in health and death. By mid-1817, Napoleon's health began to worsen. His physician diagnosed him with chronic hepatitis, attributing it to the poor climate and lack of exercise, but Governor Lowe dismissed these concerns. In November 1818, the Allies declared that Napoleon would remain a prisoner for life, news which caused him to become depressed and more isolated, further damaging his health. His condition continued to decline, and by March 1821, he was confined to his bed. In April, he wrote 2 wills claiming he was being assassinated by the English oligarchy and requesting to be buried by the Seine in France. After receiving the last rites, Napoleon died on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51. His last words were variously recorded, but often included references to France, the army, and Josephine. Autopsy. An autopsy was performed with both British and French reports concluding that the cause of death was stomach cancer, the same disease that had killed his father. Although a later theory suggested arsenic poisoning based on high concentrations found in his hair, subsequent studies showed that arsenic was common in 19th century products and that samples from his childhood also contained high levels. A 2021 study reaffirmed the original conclusion of death by stomach cancer. Napoleon was initially buried with military honors on St. Helena in the Valley of the Geraniums. In 1840, the British government permitted the return of his remains to France. His body, found well preserved within 4 coffins, was exhumed and brought to Paris for a grand state funeral attended by up to 1 million people. In 1861, his remains were permanently entombed in a sarcophagus in the crypt under the dome in Paris, where they remain today. Napoleon's legacy was carefully crafted through his extensive use of propaganda and censorship. During his reign, he controlled the press, theater, and arts to project an image of himself as a leader who brought peace and stability to France. This propaganda shaped his public persona, first as a general and later as emperor, legitimizing his regime. The Napoleonic legend after his death. This carefully constructed image did not die with him. Instead, it evolved into the Napoleonic legend, which survived his final exile. A key text in creating this legend was the Memorial of St. Helena, published in 1822 by Las Cases, who accompanied Napoleon in exile. This work portrayed Napoleon as a visionary, a liberal, and a proponent of European unification who was overthrown by reactionary forces. During the Bourbon Restoration, 1815 to 1830, the Napoleonic legend became a powerful symbol of political defiance. People across France, especially Napoleonic veterans, used his legacy and its connection to the ideals of the French Revolution to resist the monarchy. This defiance was expressed through seditious materials, displaying revolutionary symbols like the tricolor, and by celebrating anniversaries related to Napoleon's life while disrupting royal events. The legend remained a central theme in the Romantic art and literature of the 1820s and 1830s, enduring political and cultural influence. The legend's political power continued for decades. The return of Napoleon's remains to France in 1840 was an attempt by the unpopular king Louis Philippe to bolster his own regime by associating it with Napoleon's glory. Similarly, the rise of Napoleon III's regime was made possible by the continued resonance of the Napoleonic legend. Even after its direct connection to party politics faded, such as after the collapse of the militaristic Boulangism movement in the late 1880s, the legend was revived in popular culture. During the Belle Époque, writers and critics adapted the Napoleonic legend for various cultural and political purposes. In the 21st century, Napoleon continues to be a major figure in popular culture, appearing in fiction, drama, and advertising. He and his era remain significant topics of historical research, with a notable increase in academic books, articles, and symposia published during the bicentenary years from 1999 to 2015.
In his youth, Bonaparte was consistently described as small and thin. Johann Ludwig Wurstenberger, who accompanied him in 1797 and 1798, notes Bonaparte was rather slight and emaciated looking. His face, too, was very thin, with a dark complexion. His black, unpowdered hair hung down evenly over both shoulders, but that, despite his slight and unkempt appearance, his looks and expression were earnest and powerful. The English painter Joseph Farrington, who met him in 1802, said Bonaparte's eyes were lighter and more of a gray than I should have expected from his complexion. His person is below middle size, and his general aspect was milder than I had before thought it. In his later years, Napoleon gained weight and had a sallow complexion. The novelist Paul de Kock, who saw him in 1811, called Napoleon yellow, obese, and bloated. He is often portrayed wearing a large bicorned hat, sideways, with a hand in waistcoat gesture, a reference to the painting produced in 1812 by Jacques-Louis David. During the Napoleonic Wars, the British press depicted Napoleon as a dangerous tyrant, poised to invade. A nursery rhyme warned children that he ate naughty people. The Bogeyman. He was mocked as a short-tempered small man and was nicknamed Little Boney in a strong fit. In fact, at about 170 centimeters, or 5 feet 7 inches, he was of average height.
Napoleon Bonaparte, a man of brilliance, ambition, and flaws. His rise and fall remind us how power can build legends and destroy them. What do you think? Was Napoleon a hero, a villain, or something in between? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more journeys into history.